Welcome to Commissioner's Corner. I'm your host, Allen County Commissioner Ron Turpin. The ads, the signs, the mailers, it is election season, folks. How secure is my vote? How do these new voting centers work? How hard is it to vote? Here to answer all these questions and more is our elections expert, Allen County Election Director, Amy Scrogham. Amy, welcome.
Thank you.
So we always start this show off with really trying to get people a chance to share their story. How did they get to where they're at today? So share a little bit of your story with us.
So actually, I've been with the county for almost 30 years now. I started off in the clerk of courts as a teller and moved through up the ranks there. And then part of the clerk's responsibilities, we help with elections. So that's how I got my interest in the beginning. So in 2011, I became the assistant director, and then in 2021, I became the director. So
what does a typical day look like for you and your colleagues? Because there's more than just you in the office,
yes,
right?
There are 5 of us total, full time. So starting in January of this year, we started filing candidate paperwork, and then the candidates and people that have committees, they have campaign finance to file, and then we create the ballot, and then it starts going on and on. In the meantime, we're updating our website, updating the training materials, getting ready for the poll pads to be import the voter files. So we have a lot of steps to prepare for before we actually start election.
So that's a good point. There are really a couple different functions you and your team do. Mm-hmm. So people see the elections, right? Putting together the poll books and all the voting ballots and that. However, for an elected official like me, I see you most really a couple of times.
Yes.
The first time is when I file for office.
Correct.
Right. I have to go in and there's a certain form I have to file. Your team walks through it, makes sure it's done properly, right? Did you put the right area of the county in? Is it the right office? That type of thing. However, most people don't realize that every year candidates have to file a campaign finance report.
That's correct.
And something that changed in the law this last year is that before, most people never filed because they didn't have any activity.
Correct.
Right? For a lot of local offices, they may not raise money, they may not spend money, especially between elections. And so they would never file anything. But state law changed, didn't it?
Yes. So with that, if you make under $5,000, you're not required to file. So a lot of the township offices, may not have to file. But now, even if you make over $5,000 and you don't raise or spend, you still have to keep a committee open and owe those annual reports. So that was really rough last year, and we contacted all of those people. So that's like around 156 people that we had to contact to make sure their committee was open and that they filed timely in January.
Yeah, because there are very set laws as to how you do this. I know for me, I became my own treasurer because it was easier for me as a lawyer and a CPA to figure out all the pieces. Okay, where do I put this donation and that? How do I fill it out correctly? Then relying on someone else to do that. Because at the end of the day, it's your name that goes on it.
That's
if you
correct.
are the candidate, you are the one responsible for what happens. And so that is one that I know a lot of friends and colleagues of mine that have never filed before, or like school board members. I came from being a school board member to being commissioner, and most of my colleagues had never filed one because they never really had to raise money.
Correct.
And so that was a big learning curve. So what are the types of things that you and your team do? Obviously, you're super busy now, right? And we'll talk as we go through here about some of the things that you guys are working on today. So once we get past the primary, you've got that lull between the primary and the general. What are some of the things that your team does?
We take vacations. So because starting in January, we don't really take vacations until March, the beginning of March. And then in the middle of March, we start working on the ballot and we have to proof the ballot. So I don't really let anybody take off. And then we start elections will end. And that's usually the middle of May by the time we audit and finish our, certify it to the state. So it's really the end of May to the beginning of September that we can take off. So that's not a lot of time. And then also in between that time, we're preparing for the next election. So we either tweak some things, we update our training, new laws may change in between that time that change in July. So we have to update that as well for the general ballot and the general election in general. So that's what we're doing in between, is getting ready. Plus now it's a little different with school board. They actually file during that time period now, because before it used to be a little farther out. Right. So during the summer, they have the conventions and things like that. So we get that information from Libertarians, Independents, and we'll have school board. So we pretty much stay busy year round, but we prepare for the next election.
Well, and school board, speaking of that, will look different this time as well, because in the past it was always a nonpartisan office. So you file for school board in the summer, and you're on the November ballot, depending on whatever your cycle is. It still is that way now. However, I think you have a choice, don't you?
You do.
You can either declare as a Republican, a Democrat, or as an independent.
Correct.
Right?
Like a nonpartisan.
Right.
Yep.
So that will be a change.
It will be a
voters
change.
will see
in
November. It won't be on this ballot.
That's correct.
Right.
And I'm curious to see, I don't know exactly how it's going to look. I'm sure the state will tell us. We have a big conference that we go to, a 3-day conference in June, to kind of explain everything and then get you going for the fall election. But I'm sure they'll explain in more detail how it will look. I have something in my head how it will look, but I don't know if that's exactly right. So
yeah. So a big topic, something that you and I talked about when I first became commissioner, is that voting centers.
Yeah.
And this is something that 2/3 of Indiana does.
Yes.
It's been going on for a number of years. Tell us what they are.
Okay.
And for the residents of Allen County that are not aware of that, what will it look like to them?
Okay. So a vote center is any registered Allen County voter can go to 53 locations on election day. So previously you were assigned to a location based off of where you lived. Now you can drive by, went to the grocery, and go vote. You're not assigned to one location anymore. So that's great. Nobody will be in the wrong place anymore. So we're really excited about that. So we will have more machines at each location. So they hopefully will not have a line. And if they do, we can deploy machines quickly because we have less locations that we're holding all of our machines before. So in 2024 general, all of our machines were deployed, whether it was early voting or election day. I know early voting was extremely busy, but all of those machines were spoken for election day. So I would have had to take them away from election day to use them for early voting. Well, now we don't have as many sites, so I can have extra machines ready to go. And we're going to do kind of hubs in Allen County because, we're very large. So we'll have some up north, we'll have some in the middle, and we'll have some down south where we can, my mechanics, I have 6 great guys that will deploy those as if needed. They will have some in their vehicle, and then if they need to, they can go to those hubs and deploy, whether that's early voting or election day, which is great because everybody has all the ballots. So no matter where you live, your ballot will be there waiting for you.
And I know we've talked about, so for early voting, we've actually added 2 locations. We've had 5 in the past.
Correct.
And we added 2 more this time. One more on the north, kind of east corner of the county, and one southwest.
Yes.
What was the purpose behind that?
I think Allen County likes to vote early. So in 2024, we kind of killed Solomon Farms, which is northwest. And because a lot of people from the northeast were coming over, like the Leo, Cedarville, Grable, that whole area was coming over to vote there. So Grace Point was willing enough to give it a try. And so we added that. So hopefully those people, we can spread them out a little because we can see where people live when they vote. So we can kind of see, we had over 3,000 people come over to Solomon to vote early. Right. So, and then we decided to add one more towards the New Haven area because, that way we can kind of split it out more in the outskirts to kind of pull people in so they don't have to travel as far or kind of alleviate some of the locations for being busy.
So to remind people, so as we're talking now, early voting has started.
Yes.
And so you can vote from now till election, till the Saturday before election
Actually,
day.
Monday before election day.
Monday?
Yes.
Okay, so
8 to noon, Monday.
At Rousseau, downtown, right?
Yes.
And then the week before the election, we have the early voting centers, those 7 we talked about that open. And then obviously election day,
Yes.
we have the 53
That's
centers that are
correct.
there. So giving people, and of course there's always mail-in.
Correct.
That's allowed.
Yep.
So really, and I tell people, it's trying to give voters as many options as possible that fits
Absolutely.
their life to be able to vote. Because
That's
the one
absolutely
thing
right.
I know I feel passionately about, and I know you do, is to make sure as many voters that can vote get the chance to do that.
Right.
Because the more that participate, the better it is for our community, the more engagement, the more feedback that we have as elected officials. That's a good thing.
Yes, absolutely.
And so with that, we will take our first commercial break. You are listening to Commissioner's Corner. Welcome back to Commissioner's Corner. I am Allen County Commissioner Ron Turpin, and my special guest today is Amy Scrogham, our Director of Elections in Allen County. So Amy, we were talking a little bit about what voters should expect in Allen County for this. You've been in your role for a number of years. What is the most enjoyable part of your job and why?
I would say giving voters the opportunity to exercise their right to vote. To me, it's important to vote regardless of what age. And I love the fact that we can do that for people and try to make it as easy as possible. We try to accommodate. And I feel with adding vote centers, this will accommodate people that may not be always up on their, registration and making sure they're at the, registered in the right place. So I feel like this gives them more opportunities to make it fit in their daily life.
Yeah, one of the things we did this show for is I intentionally will not get political. We will not have candidates on. We won't do those type of things. It's more educational, helping to inform citizens of big things that are going on so that they can make informed decisions, which hopefully translates to them voting.
Yes, I hope.
And having informed decisions as to the person to vote for that based on the topics they're studying. So we talked about the most enjoyable. What is the least enjoyable?
I would say the ballots. When after all the candidates are, we had, 340 candidates this election. So we have to make sure we entered them in the system correctly. Make sure their L's there if they have an L, or, make sure their nickname's there, or, make sure there's no periods, and make sure it's alphabetical order. And we have a Indiana code that we follow that it tells us exactly who goes in order, how it does. And then we get our information from the state, because anybody state and federal, they file at the state level. So they give us a certified list of who's supposed to be on the ballot. Well, then you have challenges at the state and local if we did not, thank goodness. But you have to wait for that to be done before you can even process. So the stress time, this is the end of February, and we start sending the ballots out, and we have to get them prepped by the beginning of March. So it's like a 2-week cycle, and it's pretty stressful making sure everybody gets the correct ballot because, we may not be represented by the same people, so you have to make sure they get exactly what they're supposed to get. So that makes us lose our sleep a little bit on that one.
Well, and it's interesting. The listener will say over 300 people on the ballot. Well, remember, this primary is when people select delegates for either the Democrat or the Republican conventions. So a lot of those folks on there are doing that, or I think this time is also Democrat precinct committee.
That is correct.
The Republicans were 2 years ago.
That's correct.
So those add a lot of people to the ballot as well. And a lot of times I've seen that candidates who aren't as experienced in this as others may not always fill their filing documents out correctly. And that's where someone, is it Ronald Turpin? Is it Ronald Wayne Turpin? Or is it Ron Turpin? Those are important.
Yes.
Because that determines how you're going to be on the ballot.
That's correct.
And your team does a great job, I think, of coaching people and helping guide them to, okay, what is it that you want? How does that comply with the law? And making sure that it's filled out properly.
Right. The state form is not the easiest to figure out. So that's, we usually help people with that because we want it to be exactly how they want it to be on the ballot. So
election security is a big topic nationwide. What measures are in place, both in Allen County and the state, in order to prevent voter fraud or tampering of the machines or your vote?
So a few things. We have, it's called VStop. It is through Ball State, and it's the, let me see, what's the name of it? It's like voter technological oversight program. So they give us guidelines on with all of our machines. So how we make sure the machines are up to where they're supposed to be. They give us a random list of all of our machines. And the ones that we're using for the election, we take 5% of them and we actually do a public test on them where we actually vote for each candidate on that precinct. And we make sure based off of my pre-audited report that it matches. So that's one way that we make sure, and we tally out the machines and we make sure it comes out exactly right, and my board approves it. And then I send it to the state to say that it's certified. So along with technology, technology is getting bigger and bigger in our world as well. We have poll pads, so, which are pretty much iPads. You scan your ID. Those are connected to a secure Wi-Fi. And nobody can get in. They're programmed that way just to be to this Wi-Fi. And what that's doing is it connects to us downtown. So we know that if you vote, you can't vote again. So it scans your ID. Eventually, it will come to us within a few minutes and show that you voted. So when you vote early and in person, so this is technology, we're going to encode the vote card. So what that means is your information of what you selected, whether Republican or Democrat in a primary, it will put that on this card along with your ballot. And when you go to the voting machine, when the judge inserts it, it will pull up your exact ballot based off of what you selected and where you live based on your precinct. The nice thing is our voting machines are not connected to the internet. I know people think that they are. They're not. And when that card goes in, that information gets downloaded into that machine. And then when the card pulls out, the card can be reused because it wiped it out. So at the end of the night, the judges, bipartisan, everything's always bipartisan too, no matter what we do in our inside of our office and at the polls and early voting. They will take that information onto a tally card. And on election day, they bring those tally cards to us by bipartisan team. When it comes to us, we take those tally cards with another bipartisan team and we insert it into a card reader. The laptop it goes to is not connected to anything. It's its own special laptop that my vendor gives me to run this program to be able to tally the votes at 6 p.m. on election day. So we're with all of and we log everything. So no matter wherever you see it, there's a seal on something. Now, obviously, when we cut the machines open at night, or in the morning, we cut the seal off so you can open the actual case, but it's logged every time. So if something was different than the log the night before, we will know.
So I know on election night, people will see results come in very quickly and then it takes a while, right?
Yes.
So typically what you said, reading those cards, those early voting sites, those will be the ones that you get first,
That's
right?
correct.
As well as the mail-in ballots
Yes.
that you've gotten that were there by election
Yes.
day. And then it becomes a situation where this will be different to see this year, right?
Correct.
Because with over 100 voting precincts in the past, some of those come in right away.
Right.
Others, it takes a while for them to get the poll place taken down, and maybe they're in a far part of the county.
That's correct.
And it may be a couple hours before they come out, right? Or if you had a long line election night, the way the law works is that if you were in line by 6 o'clock, you get to vote.
That is correct.
So they may not be done until 7, or so,
Right.
and then voting, and
Right.
then so really you'll see those voters come in later.
That's correct.
That adds to that. Even though we've moved to these voting centers, we still have a set number of voting machines we have in Allen County, correct?
Yes.
How many do we have?
We have 715.
Okay. It's spread out throughout 53 voting centers that we will have this time. How do you determine how many voting machines to put in each center?
Well, right now, previously, we would do it based off of how many people were assigned to that location. Now we're just putting 10 at every location, early voting and election day, minus Monroeville because it's at the library and it's a little too small. But we're assigning 10 no matter what. And if they get busy, we will assign more. And the locations can hold them because they're larger locations. So,
Well, and I think you talked before about one of the things I think is a great idea on election day, you will have technicians in 4 corners of the county, right? That if there is a problem on election day, when a machine broke or they needed one, you've got kind of these hot teams that will be able to go there right away and help take care of it.
Right.
Yeah, people forget 660 square miles.
Yes,
we are
we're
a
big.
big geographic county, and it takes a while, doesn't it, to get to point A to B of where we're at. You talked a little bit about this, but how do we test our voting machines and get them certified for Election Day? Because they are tested, they are certified.
So, as I said, Voter VSTOP, which is the Voting System Technical Oversight Program, gives us a list of the numbers that we have to test. And as I said, we test to make sure we can retract. We make sure that we can, which means you take a vote off of the actual ballot. We even do the Scantron cards. So when people, we test everything from the machines to the actual cards that people fill out. So, and if something was wrong, then that's my vendors there to make sure everything goes right. So.
And with that, we will take our next commercial break. You are listening to Commissioner's Corner. Welcome back to Commissioner's Corner with Ron Turpin. I am with Amy Scrogham, Director of Elections in Allen County. And Amy, we've been talking about machines and voting centers and different parts of that. Looking at Allen County, we've talked before that Allen County is significantly larger land mass-wise than other counties in Indiana. We have 660 square miles. Because of that, we have many urban, suburban, and rural areas with that. How do we ensure that those that are in rural areas or other outlying communities have equal access to voting?
Sure. This is a problem that we do run into because some of the areas that are outlying in Allen County are farm fields. So there's no buildings around, or if there are, they may not be ADA accessible. So the majority of them that are really far out, we just have no facilities there. So what we do is try to get something as close as it could be and maybe have 2 sites that might be closer together, because that way it can bring all of those people to that location if they choose. And then, there's 2, so they'd have a couple to choose from because they're so far out.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the reasons for voting centers, right? Is that, if it's early voting, for example, and I'm running, over, if I live, east of Harlan, but I'm over at, the Meyer on 37, Grace Point's not that far away, or there's some other things that are there. And also we need to remind people, if you are over 65, you can vote early. You can. And there's also a number of other exceptions that are there if you're out of the county or some of those things. So that's certainly an option as well. If the election day is going to be hard for me to vote, you certainly can use one of the early voting centers, or depending on what one of those criteria is, mail-in voting is an option for you.
Absolutely.
One of the reasons I started this program was to really inform the public and help address misinformation. In a social media can be great. However, it can also be great at sending out rumors and gossip and things that just aren't true. How do you, and I know this never happens.
Absolutely not.
But theoretically, if there's misinformation or disinformation about the election process, how does your team deal with that?
Well, I try to address the misinformation heads on. If we have calls or emails, we're transparent with our answers. So if someone thinks something's happening, I may reach out to the media if they were the one that did it, or if a voter's concerned, we will email them back. And if someone has questions or concerns, they can always email us and say, or call and say, I've heard this. Is this true? A rumor that we had was when we go to vote centers, we're getting rid of early voting. And I was like, well, no, because we need early voting to help vote, help election day voting. That's why it was brought up in the first place. So we usually try to address it right away and get the correct information out as soon as we can.
So we talked a little bit about technology, and you walked us through some of the things that your team does with technology. I remember when I was in undergrad, I worked for the clerk in West Central Indiana, in the community I grew up in. And, that was when still we did, a lot of the old punch cards, remember the hanging chads and all that. And so technology has changed certainly the way that we vote. How has that really sped up the process and at the same time not really impacted accuracy of voting?
So with what I said about with the technology with poll pads, you use your ID. So we scan your ID and then your information comes up. So it speeds it up because when we used to have even poll books, paper poll books, you would have to look through the alphabet and then, oh, you're in this precinct, so you need to go to that book. And then, or I only do A through L, so you need to go over here. So it's definitely sped that up in that you can 99% of the time you can find the person based off their ID.
And they had to check your signature to make sure it looked right.
Yes. And if it didn't, then, I mean, we do still have that process now that in the poll pad, it has your previous signature on record. And then for mailed ballots, it's actually gotten better. We would actually, when you submit an application, we verify online to see if it's the same. And then once you get the ballot back, we do it again and make sure that the signature looks the same on the ballot. And then a Democrat and a Republican both check it, and then it gets filed. And we do canvassing, which is usually the Sunday before where we prep. They check it again, and if they don't like it, then it goes to my board, which is bipartisan, to check it again. And then and if, so, I mean, we like triple check everything when it comes to making sure that is who the voter is. And then if we don't, we even have a signature history of the voter signatures to see if maybe they're aging or they did by e-poll books. So, their signature's a little more squiggly. So, yep.
Yeah, I know when we all fill this out, we take a great kind and tear, right?
Yes.
So things happen, right? Mm-hmm. Especially, I mean, probably you can give a story of all kinds of weird things that have happened during election, both election day and early voting. How prepared is your office for emergencies, power outages, natural disasters, security threats? What type of role playing do you guys do, and how well are you prepared for those type of things?
Well, we work closely with our local emergency management and local law enforcement. So they know all of our locations, early voting and election day, the hours, the locations, and then we have power supply backups, batteries if needed to be deployed to locations. And we also have an incident response plan for any kind of incident that you could possibly think of. So we've had those in place for quite a while. So I think after COVID, we created a new one for that. But that one was definitely fly by the seat of our pants on that one. But it worked out well. The Coliseum was great. They helped us out. So, but we definitely wrote that up after.
Is there something that you see more often than other things?
Not really. I'd say we're pretty good in Allen County. We really haven't had very many issues. We've had some power outages like along the roads to get there, but not necessarily at the locations.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing I've seen in the past is really, again, going back to early voting. The closest early voting site to us was Solomon Farms, mm-hmm. right? And I do remember, in 24, obviously I was on the ballot,
crazy.
So I was
right.
working.
Right.
I was
crazy.
working and things, and it was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we just had so many people turn out. It does seem, you and I have talked about it, seems like folks in Allen County typically love to vote on election day mm-hmm. and haven't used early voting as much. But that election, for some reason, especially that area was just packed.
Crazy. Yep.
And, the biggest challenge was really parking.
Yes, that was one reason why we decided to move away from Solomon because we kind of killed them. So we love them. They were great and we'll miss them, but I think they're excited. They've already booked it out. So so that was good for them. But I think that's another reason we learn after every election. Right. We tweak something, we change something, we'll add something, and that's what we're going to continue doing.
Right. Well, I know in that one, when we talk about, being hard on the facility, it really was because they didn't have enough parking. Mm-hmm. A lot of people were parking wherever they could, right? The grass, the median, the road. And particularly, I know the hardest thing is, watching older people who have mobility issues, trying to maneuver through that. So I know when you and your team looked at alternative sites, one of the criteria you had was plenty of parking, mm-hmm. right?
Yes.
As well as accessibility. Again, particularly for a lot of older folks mm-hmm. or people with other mobility issues, to make sure that, again, the voting experience, there's no barriers, right? That it's one that they are able to get in. I know another thing your team looked at is, really trying to get away from facilities that had stairs. Where you've got to walk downstairs or go upstairs to vote. How can it be something that's on one floor, that's open, well lit? those type of things again to make a better experience.
Yes. And also, we've told people that, if you are bringing someone that's elderly, you can drop them off at the front door, have them sit inside, and you actually, if there was a line, you stand inside. Or even if you don't have someone, we know that the voters, because we've done it at early voting, we would go out and say, hey, can you be the place marker for this person? This person's going to sit inside. And I've never had a person say, oh, no, they need to stand here. So, that's always an option for someone, because I know a lot of people like to vote in person versus by mail. So we absolutely want to help accommodate as much as we can.
It is interesting, especially in more of our rural areas. It really is a community activity, isn't it?
It is.
Where, I've seen, again, I live outside Leo Cedarville, and I know, when I've went to the polls on election day, you see a lot of folks right? And conversations happen if the weather's not cruddy.
Right.
You're having that conversation outside.
Right.
And really it's a good chance to catch up. So It really is a community event for that. We talked before about the voting centers, how many you have. Things happen, right, with facilities. What contingency plans do you have in place if a center is not available at the last minute?
So actually that just happened. So once we got our plan signed and ready to go, two of the locations contacted us and said, I'm sorry, we're under construction, and they felt really bad, but they even helped us find a different location to fill in for the year. So we just amend our plan. Thank goodness it hasn't, started voting yet, but we just updated our amended vote center plan, and then that was okay. If we do have a step-by-step protocol just in case a location happens. So what we did actually in 24, one of our locations, something happened to their restroom. And I don't know if it flooded or what, but they couldn't use our facility. So what we do is we send a personal letter to all the voters and make sure that they know that your place is going to be different for this year. So we have, it goes into more detail than that, but I don't want to bore anybody on that one. But yes, and we are sending a postcard out this year like we always have, and announcing that we'll have vote centers. We can't list every vote center on there because it would be really tiny, but our websites would be something that they could look at as well. But
great. And with that, we will take our final commercial break. You are listening to Commissioner's Corner on WOWO. Welcome back to Commissioner's Corner with Allen County Commissioner Ron Turpin. My guest today is Amy Scrogham, Director of Elections in Allen County, and we've been having a great conversation about elections, election security, election locations, how determinations are made. And so we're going to continue, and we're going to pivot actually from election day to candidates. So we talked a little bit before about some of the filing processes, and you obviously and you and your team talk to a lot of candidates, right?
We do.
A lot of people who have never run for office before.
That's correct.
And this is certainly not a partisan thing. Your team serves Republicans, independents, Democrats.
Absolutely.
From your experience, what is a common thing that you see that candidates forget about when they want to run for office?
Campaign finance. So because if you make over $5,000, you're required to file. So a lot of times if they're not successful in a primary, they forget and they're like, oh, I closed my account, but they actually have to close with us. So that always runs into a problem. And we're a little more proactive now because we have so many people that have committees open. We call it a naughty board where you get put on the wall if you're late. And you do get fined.
I've never been late.
Yes, yeah. But it's heartbreaking because we try really hard. I send out notices, like an email reminder, but that's one thing that it's, because they're new or they figured they just didn't win, so they don't have to do anything else, but they actually do. And we try to remind people to do that, but it's kind of hard.
Well, and your team does a great job of, because I know the first time I ran for office, you just don't know. Right?
No, it's scary. It's new.
If you've never done this before, because there's a certain form you've got to file to file your committee, right?
Yes.
And then there's another form if you want to be on the ballot.
Yes.
And then there's another form, and especially if you're a candidate right now. And so, you have to file a finance report before the election. And then if you get a donation over $1,000, you've got to file a report within 24 hours of that.
Yes, it's a lot.
And so there is a lot. And you're right. It's very, very easy if you aren't used to this system to know what to do.
Right.
I know some of us in elected office all kind of remind each other.
That's great.
Because it's like, okay.
It's overwhelming.
It can be, and especially if it's the cycle that you're in.
Yeah.
So, for example, for me, I'm not up till the presidential year. And so, but I still had to file my annual report with you all in January.
Yes.
And that's one that if you forget it, it can be a very expensive lesson.
Yes, it can be.
And especially, you're right, the heartbreaking piece is people who don't have any money in their campaign finance report, but you still have to pay it. I mean, that is, and I will say the election board is really great about working with people.
Yeah.
They really don't want to have to, slap people's hand.
We
it
do
really
not.
is, but it's about transparency for the public.
Right. We also, another thing would be about electioneering for candidates. A lot of times they stand or place their signs too close to an entrance, or we get complaints about maybe candidates being a little too aggressive with the voters or make them feel uncomfortable, or they forget their signs at a location. That's one of the worst, or they just forget them on the street. So that's like one of the, we try to remind people, if you lose, you still got to, help, go get your stuff. And we've actually lost locations before because it's a bad thing. But we try really hard to remind people because it's you forget, you're excited, and
that is one that you're absolutely right. Having 53 voting centers will be much better than 110 poll places on election day because, when you're a serious candidate running for office, you want to have signs everywhere. And I know, when I did my races, we ran in teams where, okay, I will take these 15. Because again, I mean, if, putting out your signs at 110 locations is
a lot.
daunting, right? And then, you've only got so much time to do that. But then, I remember the day after the primary, I had won, and I'm out at, 6:30 in the morning, out in the rural parts of Allen County, because I did not only my signs, but 6 other candidates, because we had agreed to do that. And so you fill up your truck pretty fast, with those. But you're right. The last thing you want to do is to leave signs out. I hate nothing more than going a month after the election.
Yeah, and it's still there.
And seeing someone sign, I got a call from someone. We had forgotten a big sign that I did not know was out on the way to Harlan.
Oh, funny.
So I went out there. I was going to dinner with my wife, and I went out there to grab it. And by that point, weeds had grown up and all that.
Oh,
so,
no.
yeah. But no, you're right. It is a thing that people don't think about, those type of things. Obviously, you have to be Switzerland in your role, you and your team. How do you try to ensure impartiality in the work that you all do?
So we obviously run. I mean, we actually vote in a primary, so we all have party affiliation, but we don't go to any functions. We don't talk political, but we have bipartisanship in our office. So we, especially now, and when the first ballot goes out, we double lock our doors. We don't go out of our office unless both parties are in our office. It's perception. We take it very seriously. I mean, we don't go to our certain rooms that have those things in it until both of us go together. I mean, it's definitely, we take it very seriously, but we treat any person that comes in, we act like we're neutral because we don't want anybody to feel that you can only talk to me because I'm this, or I can only talk to you because you're this. We like to treat everybody as just a person, and that's how we live our lives. But right now, we have to do that bipartisanship, just for the fact of keeping things secure.
What are some other things that you would like to help educate the public on about the election process or this election in particular?
I mean, I would say voting isn't scary. So, I mean, I know some people, actually a lady came in today and she didn't want to vote on the machines. And, you can always bring someone, either early voting, election day, you can bring someone to help you. As long as they're not your union representative or your employer. But you can bring your sister in, you can even bring your child in, whatever makes you feel comfortable. And then you just sign a form. We have a form for everything, but you can sign a form saying this person's going to assist me. Or if you don't have anybody or you need assistance behind there, we have bipartisan judges that can assist you behind the machine. And I think once we've had a few people do that, I think they feel more comfortable that it's not as bad as they thought it would be.
Right. And it can be overwhelming.
It is.
Let's say, for example, my mother-in-law wanted to vote for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I don't know these other people on the ballot. And so it's trying to get over that fear factor.
Right.
You don't have to vote for every
You are
person
correct on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just have to vote for one thing.
Yeah. As long as you vote for
done.
me, I'm okay with that.
Right. You just vote for one thing,
Right.
hit the cast vote button, and you're done. So that's a great thing that I think people need to realize that, it's, we've even done that where people come in, we're like, we will go out with you and help you vote. And they were like so pleased after they got over that. And this is every location. If you are hard of hearing, or, need more assistance, we have a double talk machine that you can wear headphones and listen to the machine by yourself. I mean, you can make the font bigger, a different color. So, I mean, it's a lot, I think people would feel more comfortable if they knew that, they're all ADA accessible. Like, we can pull the the machine onto your lap if you need it to, be able to reach it. So, I think that, we take integrity of the elections it's a top priority for us. I mean, we abide by all local, state, and federal laws. And, but if anybody ever has questions or concerns, they can always contact us. I mean, we want to be open and make people feel like, we're not doing anything secretive.
Right. Well, and speaking of that, tell a little bit about the website, because we've spent considerable resources in helping update the website for people to have easy guidance through the process.
Yeah, we love our website. Our website guides through the county did an amazing job. It's just Allen County IN for Indiana, voters.gov. And you can find anything if you want to look at your campaign finance to who might be on the ballot, like the offices on the ballot. You can look up our early voting sites. You can look up election day sites. You can look up about what qualifications you need to vote by mail. We also have another website if you want to find just your election day or early voting sites by typing in your address, which is elections.acimap.us. And that's great too, which you can find all like your sample ballot on our website, based off of your address. So I think it's amazing, but...
Well, Amy, we are unfortunately out of time.
Yeah.
We could have probably spent another hour going through this. My guest today has been Amy Scrogham, Director of Elections in Allen County. Hopefully you have learned something new today, that it's been an informational hour for you. I know certainly I've learned something, and I thought I knew everything about elections, but really, if you weren't planning on voting, we would really encourage you to do that. This is an important election. All elections are important.
Yep.
However, we've really tried to work hard to make it as easy and accessible as possible for you. So the more citizens we have engaged, the better our community will be. So we'd encourage you to do that. This has been Commissioner's Corner on WOWO. I'm Ron Turpin, Allen County Commissioner. Have a great day.